I am so happy to be here today to talk about a very important question. Can Europe be a global technology powerhouse? So I think we all know the answer to this question. It is yes. I think the question is actually no, can we, but whether we choose to. We do have the capabilities, we do have the democratic credibility, but what we need is urgency and the confidence to act as one. So I think global technology powerhouse really rolls off the tongue really nicely. But when we think about 10 years in the future, so what does that look like? What does it look like if Europe is a technology powerhouse? So first of all, our values, our standards underlie the AI ecosystem. How AI learns, how AI thinks, how AI makes decisions. Second, we are a seamless continent. Technology, data moves without friction among all members of the EU. Third, we have a sovereign digital infrastructure. So we rebuild our tech backbone, which is really, really important for sovereignty, especially down the line. So I talk about chips, I talk about cloud, I talk about computing. And everyone can participate. So not just Fortune 500 companies, also small and medium-sized businesses, not just large countries, also small countries. The more, the merrier. And then last but not least, our AI will be a global export hit because of our transparency standards. Because when you use European AI, you know how we got there, you know who's liable. And why is that going to be so wanted? Because we live already in a world today where what is true or what is false is becoming much more difficult to differentiate. And with the rise of synthetic media, disinformation, that's only going to rise. So we will provide the frameworks, the technology that enables society to safely adopt AI. Sounds great. So how do we get there? But before I talk about next steps, I want to quickly talk about how different regions actually approach innovation. So there's three forces here to take into consideration. The first is culture. So our history and our values, which determines like how we even define progress, what is progress for us, but also whom we trust. The second point is cognition, which is how culture shows up in thinking. So this determines how we see opportunity and risk. And then the third, of course, is capital, which is an outflow of the first 2 points. Like, what do we spend on? High risk, low risk, long term, short term. That's the third force we need to take a look at. And then how do we show up across those three forces? So first, culture. So post-war Europe has learned that for the most part, collaboration is a good thing. If we work together, if we band together, that's helpful for everyone. And we also have a very high institutional trust. Obviously, the EU is a macro expression of that, but then on a smaller level, I want to point out, for example, Horizon Europe for combined research, as well as Kern for combined research specifically in nuclear. Second point, cognition. So this was how we deal with risk and opportunity. And I don't think I need to mention specifically that we have very strong regulatory reflexes. AI Act, Data Act, GDPR, you name it, we have it. So overall, for us, safety is much more important than scaling. We want to ensure that we take society along with it before we even think about fast adoption. Third, capital. How do we spend? And again, I think we're all aware here that we're spending very cautiously, and I just want to add some data points to that. So IMF found that Europe, on average, is spending about 0.3% on venture funding. That's just 1/3 of what the US is doing. Only 5% of global venture capital comes from Europe, and that's opposed to 52% in the US and 40% in China. Okay, so that's our foundation. How can we move into next steps here? So for culture, it's really important for us to stick with the trust as our expert when we think about AI technology. Why is that? Because over the next 10 years, AI is becoming more and more autonomous and more human. What do I mean by that? I think we all seen the science, but I just want to point to a couple of developments we just saw this year. So a group of AI agents adopted, without being prompted to do so, human behavior. They named each other. So again, like this was without prompting. At Stanford this year, they developed an AI architecture where the agents simulated survey responses of over 1,000 humans. Again, like AI becoming more and more human. A positive side effect of that is that we now can do in silico testing of like different social environments, different political environments. In regards to autonomy, an LLM this year was able to correct its own code and improve its performance by 53%. And at the DARPA competition this year, an LLM was able to autonomously discover cyber vulnerabilities and correct it. So these are just a few examples. I think we're all aware of these developments overall, but I think these are really significant and just all happened this year. So how does the public feel about it? You'd think that they are thrilled, but they're not. Skepticism is growing. And what I find specifically compelling here or interesting is that especially in advanced economies, the trend is that they're more concerned, that they're not trusting AI, and they're also more worried about the future with AI, versus an emerging economy where they might not have the same exposure as we have here right now. They're still much more optimistic. However, I think that's a no-brainer. Obviously, we need trust for adoption. I think that's common sense, but every research study points to the same. Trust increases adoption. Distrust is a stumbling block. So a specific example here also, Siemens AI pilots have found that if they work with explainable AI, that adoption among operators has been 3 times higher, and manual overrides of AI's decision is significantly lower. So trust also protects from tech backlash, which is bound to happen to some degree, and then also long-term adoption. So just not a short-time fad, but really long-term implementation into the processes. Step 2, cognition. So this is our regulatory impulse that we need to control, maybe just a little bit. So. Regulation is great to provide security, but obviously we need to ensure that it also supports trade. And things are moving into the right direction here. For example, it's been found that our harmonization standards have actually increased exports to the EU and decreased compliance cost. So overall, really led to market integration as well as supply chain streamlining. Overall, harmonization is contributing up to 13% to global trade. And then sharpening of disclosure laws and sustainability actually didn't lead to a decrease in investing, and just shifting from less transparent funds to more transparent funds, which is actually a desirable business outcome, I'd say. Overall, we need more regulatory sandboxes. Why? So that we can innovate with oversight and actually move closer towards creating rules that the business community actually needs. Now to the easiest and at the same time most difficult point, capital. I think we need to spend more. I think we know this. Again, just a few numbers here. The Stanford AI Index found private investment in AI from the US is 109 billion, Europe roughly 19 billion. In public, actually, good news, we're inching towards the US. Over the past couple of years, funding has really increased, so that's a good sign. I also want to mention at this point that US public funds into AI to 75% go into defense, while in Europe, 64% go into public services. Different keynote, if that's the same, it's supposed to be, but that's the way it's supposed to be, but I just wanted to mention, I thought it was really interesting stat. So just to point out a couple of initiatives, of course, here is the Invest AI initiative, 200 billion earmarked for building digital infrastructure, and of course, Digital Europe, where 41 CEOs bound together, again, to support our digital backbone. So things are happening. what if we fail? Very dark picture, of course. So our innovation ecosystem will wither. So in Draghi's report, he mentioned that we need 800 billion annually to close the gap in climate, defense, and digital. So if that's not happening and that's going to be permanent, our innovation system will not survive, or not in a significant way, shape, or form. Second, EU capital is continuing to flow, but not into our innovation system, but to China and the US, which will be much more profitable. Our own ecosystem will struggle. Same for our data. Obviously, we'll produce a lot of data, but we'll use digital ecosystems that are not ours. So the data will actually help other regions. There's going to be a brain drain, talent will leave, businesses will leave for greener pastures. And privacy will be a thing of the past, no? Because again, we will be using digital ecosystems, just not ours, but from regions that have a very different approach to privacy than we would like it to be. We will be an open-air museum. Actually, the tourism industry might be then a good industry to venture into. They will be doing really, really well. We really need to act now. I can't reiterate that enough. Why? We're all aware geopolitical landscape is reshuffling. We need to claim our place. We need to find our role here. But also, again, nothing new. AI is scaling exponentially, and it's taking the rest of the technology with it. It's an enabling technology. Every other thing is being sped up. The longer we wait, the bigger the gap becomes for us to catch up, and at a certain point, it's going to be impossible. And honestly, we have a huge advantage in regards to China and also US because we actually build societies people want to live in. So that's a huge market advantage we have. So again, just to reiterate, the question isn't if we can. The question is whether we seize the urgency of the moment to act as one. Thank you.